Welcome into National Signing Day week here at 24/7 Sports, alongside national recruiting analyst Alan Treiu of 24/7 Sports, as well as Mike Schaefer of Husker 24/7. I am Blair Angulo to break down Nebraska's recruiting class here in the 2024 class, which ranks number 18th. And guys, this is the best class that the Huskers have signed since 2019, as Matt Rule continues to turn things around there in Lincoln. Let's begin with you, Mike. Who are some top players in this class that fans need to know?
Yeah, I mean, you got to start with Dylan Raiola, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't get any bigger for Nebraska fans than a five-star quarterback, a legacy. I mean, his dad's name is on the stadium at Memorial Stadium. It really can't get bigger than that. And oh, by the way, he's probably your starting quarterback in 2024. And so for Nebraska fans, this was the biggest piece of the class. It came together late in December. The door was always open. And when Dylan came calling, Nebraska was all too happy to add him to the mix. And it's going to change the look of this offense. I mean, they had to do a lot of things last year to kind of just get to their 5 wins. Now they can run a more traditional offense. And I think it'll open things up in the passing game, especially.
Yeah, so Mike took the obvious one with Dylan. I will go with one of the players I think he's going to have as a weapon for at least 3 or 4 years, and that's tight end Carter Nelson. Such a rare athlete. I mean, in any other Nebraska class, this would be the top guy in the group, but there's Dylan Raiola in this one. I mean, he's an All-American, played in the Poly Bowl, has done just about everything he can do at the high school level athletically, from playing every position on the field, including punter, to what he did in track and field. I mean, just incredible numbers. As a hurdler, as a sprinter, he could do it all. And then what he did in terms of basketball as well. He's just a fantastic all-around athlete, one of the best all-around athletes in the country, in my opinion. And when I look at what Nebraska has at the tight end position, I think he'll be poised to come in and as long as he can adjust the level of competition, be an impact guy.
Those two were inseparable. I just spent a week with them over at the Polynesian Bowl in Hawaii, guys. I don't know if you can tell by my skin complexion. They want to be able to turn things around. That was the big thing that Carter Nelson said. They want to be part of that piece, that foundation, the building blocks for a turnaround there in Lincoln. They are 8 of the total 4 stars or better to sign with Nebraska in this class. They do have some blue chippers coming in, but they do have some hidden gems. That's been the calling card for Matt Rule. And Alan, let's begin with you. Who are some guys that maybe that staff loves that potentially are flying under the radar a little bit?
Yeah, I'm going to go into the defensive backfield. I think that's a place where you can find some developmental guys with some traits, and I think Nebraska's done that. In-state prospect Caleb Benning, I know he had some other Power 5 offers. His legacy guy's been on the board for a while, but I don't know that he gets enough attention nationally. And Mike was actually one of the people who saw him during the season and kind of turned us on to the fact that he was one of the best players on the field in a game that was full of other Nebraska commits and other Power 5 recruits. Really, really good athlete, another track guy who's played both sides of the ball. I think he's a little bit underappreciated when you look at this class. And then Donovan Jones was a kid that Nebraska found who I don't know inside the state. Many people knew about him. I don't think he had any other big offers at the time. We raised him to a 3-star guy during the season, but he was not a guy who you were tracking, early in his career. So I think they did a really good job of uncovering him. And I think when you look at these two guys, they both bring size to the table. They both bring varied athleticism to the table. You look at what Donovan Jones can do after he gets his hands on an interception. Just a really, really good all-around athlete. So I think between those two guys, those are 2 hidden gems and 2 guys who I think will end up playing a lot for Nebraska in the secondary, even though they may not show up right at the top of this class list.
Yeah, Allen definitely hit on 2 guys I really like right here in the state of Nebraska and Caleb Benning and Donovan Jones. But I'm going to go down to Texas, where in the Houston area, Nebraska brought in 2 players. One of them, tight end Ian Flint, is a guy that I think they had early in their class, and you sort of forget about these guys when they just stay committed and there's no drama and there's nothing that really happens. But this is someone that can come in. He's going to be able to develop for a year, I think, before they really need him. And then he's going to be one of those sort of blocking style tight ends, like an inline tight end. Nebraska has the Carter Nelsons, the Thomas Fidonis, the flash athletes at the position. They need a guy that can help control the line of scrimmage, can set up some of their running games. I think that's what Ian Flint is. I think he's one of those guys that we're going to look back at this class, and he's going to have a big impact as to what Nebraska does offensively. And they really like finding tight ends like that. I think they want to mix and match with the explosion to get some of those bigger tight ends. And I think Ian is one of those individuals. And then I'm going to go out to actually, I'll stay in Texas. We'll go with Gibson Pyle, another offensive lineman that Nebraska is really excited about in this class. They brought in a lot of offensive linemen. I think they're trying to rebuild what they have up front. They have a very veteran group for the 2024 season. Gibson Pyle's a guy who had, a nice camp season. They got him invite down there to San Antonio. He's a big interior offensive lineman that's athletic. He can move people, and he's someone that they're, I think, very, very looking forward to what he can do up front. I know that he's a favorite of Donovan Raiola's as well. And then real quickly, out in Montana, number one player in that state, a legacy in Quinn Clark, great player, a guy that people should keep an eye on down the line.
Not a lot of players come out of the state of Montana. I'll give you a bonus one. Preston Taumua, the 4-star offensive lineman. It might be weird to say that a 4-star is a hidden gem, but he missed the entire senior year recovering from a knee injury. We saw him at the Polynesian Bowl. He's the closest thing that I remember to seeing Panay Sewell, the Detroit Lions number 7 overall pick, and obviously one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. I think Preston Taumua has that type of ability to be able to make an impact in Lincoln. And speaking of impact, and Mike, we'll begin with you once again. This is a roster that has a lot of opportunity. Are there any guys on this recruiting class or on this list that you see being able to make an impact on the field right away?
Yeah, the obvious one is Dylan Raiola, and I talked about him a little bit earlier. I'm going to go to a guy that I think he's going to have an opportunity to throw to a little bit this year in Ja'Cory Barney Jr. He's a wide receiver Nebraska was able to pull out of Miami. They were able to prevent Miami from keeping someone in their own backyard, and then they held off a late push from Arizona. I like what Ja'Cory Barney Jr. can bring to the offensive play for Nebraska. He's dynamic. You can get the ball in his hands behind the line of scrimmage. You can get him vertical. You can do a bunch of different things with him, and I think he can help right away this year.
I'm going to stick with my guy in Carter Nelson, and I know he's going to have a big jump to make in terms of the competition level. Played 8-man football, but I just think when I look up and down Nebraska's roster, there aren't many guys who have his athleticism. He has speed. You're going to find a way to use him. Maybe if he's not your starting tight end or even one of your main tight ends, I think you find a way to get that athleticism on that field. We saw that a little bit with Malachi Coleman last year, another in-state guy who really great athlete, who we weren't sure was polished enough to come in, play right away. He comes in and has a huge impact. I think I look at what Malachi did last year, and I think Carter may have the same type of chance to do that this year just because he's such a great athlete in the same mold.
This was the first true recruiting class for Matt Rule since he took over the helm there in Nebraska. The best ever class he ever signed at Baylor was ranked number 29th nationally. So this is a jump up 11 spots, and I'm sure Husker fans want him to continue to rise and continue to ascend as he gets more notoriety and as he starts to put some of the top players that he has recruited on the field to make an impact there in Lincoln. This class sits number 6 among Big Ten programs in that new look Big Ten. And Alan, when you look at this class as a whole, how do you think it fits into the team dynamic and what Coach Matt Rule wants to accomplish?
Well, I think you saw the signs of it at the end of last year's class that he wants to bring in traitsy guys. He comes from an NFL evaluation background, and I think that continued into this class, although they were able to get a little bit more of a foothold into this class where they could start recruiting these guys a little bit earlier, win some of those recruiting battles, like a Grant Bricks who we didn't touch on, but that's a really good win. And I think that's a good sign of what they're going to be able to do down the road. So you give them another year to get out on the trail, to get on these guys earlier. They're identifying, in my opinion, high upside athletes. I think they're doing a good job of spreading their recruiting around too. We've talked about guys from inside the state. We've talked about guys from several other regions. They don't forget about their home footprint, but they do still go out and recruit nationally. So far, so good. And I think the results are right there. The proof is in the pudding of what they're able to do in terms of where this class is ranked compared to the last couple of classes.
Yeah, it's really interesting. They really hammered the defensive line their first cycle, and it was a short one. He got here in November of 22, and they did a nice job working up front on the defensive line. They did the reverse this year with the offensive line. I mean, the whole cycle, you heard Blair mention Preston Taumua. I mentioned Gibson Pyle. No one even said Grant Bricks great player out of the state of Iowa, a guy that Nebraska had a big recruiting win for. So they really did a nice job up front. They added a lot of defensive backs. And of course, they got Dylan Raiola, their quarterback of the future. I would look for Nebraska to really focus on skill position players moving forward, but they want to set that foundation. And it feels like they've really done that with the trenches. And now they have their quarterback, and everything else will start to fall in place as they build off of those things.
A lot to like about this Nebraska class and a lot to be optimistic about if you're a Nebraska fan as we look ahead to future classes. You can catch all the coverage from Alan Treiu and Mike Schaefer over at Husker 24/7, the Nebraska site on the 24/7 Sports Network. Thanks so much for joining us, guys.